welcome all of you to Gems from the Wisdom Tradition, a conversation circle, on today's subject, which is dissolving boundaries. When I had a chance to hear about and then to meet in person a wonderful photographer, Frank Jackson, I thought, this seems like someone who could shed some light on a topic like this. And indeed, to give us a little bit further introduction, I'm going to call upon Greg Hatton, who also gave us a presentation from the photographic tradition. And he's going to introduce and interview Frank for us today. So, Greg.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here again. If you guys might remember me, I was speaking about photography and cinema and tying that into a lot of the different things that we see in life and the through line that connects a lot of the things that we live through. One of the things that I mentioned or might have mentioned was, just the mentors that come into our lives and can teach us a lot. And today we get the opportunity to talk with Frank Jackson, who's one of my mentors. He's a photographic genius. And I met him by chance. And we, a friendship blossomed and it really turned into something special. Frank stayed with us for a little bit and we had a conversation and, Renee offered the opportunity for him to come and speak on the topic of dissolving boundaries. And, there's a lot of that topic that can be said when it comes to photography in general, especially when you think about a photo project. And if you guys aren't really aware of what a photo project is when a photographer decides to fixate on something specific, whether it be a person, a nation, an animal, a car, and they spend years and years and years photographing this thing for the purpose of communicating what that thing is. And it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time and discipline. And it's an interesting story when we're talking about dissolving boundaries, and you're going to know why once I give you a little bit more about Frank. But if you'll take a look at the screen really quickly, I'll show you just some of the work that Frank has done. That is Frank Jackson there. He's traveled the world and he's taken some of the most beautiful black and white photographs that I mean, they really do come from a different time. And, his mastery of the craft is from a different era. He can do pretty much anything there is to do digitally and with film. And the creativity is there, the expertise is there. And it's really just an intimate, approach to creating photography. So when we're talking about the subject of dissolving boundaries, and in photo projects in general, it was very interesting because Frank's been doing a photo project since 1989, and he's been shooting coffee cups since 1989 to the present day. And the story of why he shoots coffee cups is really amazing. And, I think we're gonna get to learn more about that. So without further ado, everybody, this is Frank Jackson. How are you, sir?
How are you all doing?
Frank, I wanted to see if you can tell us a story behind why you chose the cup. Like, what does the cup mean to you when you think about dissolving boundaries, and why did you choose that to fixate on and take pictures of?
So I learned photography by taking pictures of eggs, and an espresso cup is half of an egg, shaped like an egg. And the other thing about the egg shape, the egg is life, and the egg is probably one of the strongest structures, naturally made structures ever. You can hold it in your hand a certain way and you can't crush it, and then if you do it the other way, of course, it's an omelet. So the connection with the life thing and the shape, coffee, everybody drinks coffee. If they don't drink coffee, they drink tea, which is another kind of coffee. I watched people at a coffee house. I watched a girl sit there and she was having a moment. And when I watched her have her moment, and when she left, the evidence of her moment was what she left on the table with that cup. And I decided this is a community. This is how people get together and talk. Groups of people get together and share things. Now people they leave their house, they set their house up to do their work in and get work done. They leave their house and bring all their office stuff and go work at their spot, because that spot gets them through some of the boundaries they can't get through to get where they need to be. Sometimes you go to that spot and all of a sudden, click, the door is gone. You can go in, you can do whatever you want to do. We talk about, as human beings, we all have boundaries. You can't get, some of them you can't, they're there. And one of the boundaries is called, you have a lifespan. That's your boundary. But you can learn to be limitless within your boundary while you're in your lifespan. So I started photographing the coffee cups, and I wouldn't touch them. Wouldn't touch them. I left them alone. I would shoot them and then walk away. And a few years later, when I was in Holland at a coffee place, that's the very first coffee cup picture that she left. You can see where she had the wet rings where she didn't moving it around. I was in Holland at a coffee place, and my buddy worked there, and there was a cup, saucer and spoon, and I really liked it. And I said, I want this. He said, put it in your pocket. So I did. So that cup, I still have to this day. It has been dropped. It has been broken. I've glued it back together again. I actually love it more now because it looks like it's got some nicks and crannies like I do. It's in my camera bag every day. That was in New York City. And that's also the cover of, I'll show you when I get the camera back, a couple of the books that I've produced behind this. So the cup is posed. The cup is always posed. That is the cup, and that's all analog. That's nothing about this shot is digital. It is floating. I wired everything in place. You can't see the wires. It took a long time to set this up. And then I used a light, I light painted it to expose it. So it's a long exposure on the film. When I was able to shoot, I guess we'll show you the picture of the floating egg at some point. That was when I finally started to understand photography and lighting. For me, the lighting is everything. It doesn't matter whether it's a person, place, or thing. If the light is right, I'm shooting it. I'm taking a picture of it.
So you told me a story one time, Frank, about how, or actually you were touching on it a little bit, but how everybody is kind of congregates around like the idea of coffee. No matter where you were in the world, you would see people congregating in coffee houses. And then the theme of coffee just kept repeating itself. And it was interesting how that coffee served as a sort of subtle like dissolver of boundaries, because you saw people of different places and different races and different cultures in the place. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, in Italy, that is that's the coffee place. So they are very, very traditional. You don't have a cappuccino after 11. It's literally they think there's something wrong if you order cappuccino after 11 o'clock in the morning. You can order other drinks, espresso, lattes, and other things. They have their cafes set up so you stand up, you walk in, you tap the bar, they make your espresso, you get your espresso, you drink it, and you leave. If you sit down, it's more money. It's two prices. In France, there's a lot of new style and old style coffee houses. In Vienna, that's the traditional coffee place. I mean, you go there and they'll sit down all day. And a waiter will come in shirt and, really well dressed. It's a beautiful oak panel room. It's almost comical. They'll put down a basket of croissants for you and give you a newspaper, and you can be there all day.
And that's I mean, even though there's those different styles, you're still seeing commonality of people going there to enjoy the coffee, right? Regardless of what their background is.
Yeah, and the smarter coffee places put communal benches down. So you're forced to sit together. And when I'm in Europe, I love it. I love that. You know, as Americans, we're taught mind your space. Everyone has a space. You don't get close to each other. In Europe, people are always bumping into you, you know, and most of the time it's not a pickpocket. Sometimes it is. I've caught a couple, you know, and that's another story. It is, and living in, I came to Los Angeles when I was 19, 20 years old. This city is so huge. Everyone lives their lives in their cars. So they leave their space, or their neighborhood, or their where they live, where they're, you know, they get in their car. They don't see anything when they're driving to where they're going to do their work or where they're going to go play. And since they don't really ride the buses here and they're not forced to deal with public transportation, people have this spatial thing. So the coffee thing here is kind of cool because there's a couple of places here where they have communal benches, and it forces people to get out of that, dissolve these boundaries. And, you know, hey, you know, if you're going to sit next to somebody, at least you can nod and say, how are you doing today? You know?
So when you're taking the pictures of the coffee cup, because it's interesting, usually as a photographer, you know, especially when we're talking about that photo project like we did at the beginning, photographers are known to be shooting something really, really glamorous, right? Like, you know, you're going to shoot a beautiful model, or you're going to shoot a picturesque landscape or something like that. You know, I don't think anybody would ever think that the coffee cup would be something so important to give that much attention to. And understanding, like, you know, one thing that I've picked up along the way as a photographer is like there's really beauty in everything that we do. And you almost have to get your head past, you know, what society says is nice or what you think you can do, because you can never, I mean, there's so much more to it. And I think that you show that in some of your work, because after you had that initial picture of the cup in these different places and people drinking, you started to pose the cup everywhere you went. And I thought that that was very elegant, that you took the cup with you and kind of brought it to life in all these different places. So basically expanding, the idea of what could come through your art, and making this, I can show a couple pictures, and making this a little bit more about what's possible.
The cup that I took from the coffee house, this cup, and yeah, that's the cup too. We would shoot. One of my friends he's a friend now. He's a client. He loved doing glamour nudes. His wife would make the costumes for us. And the deal was he would never take a picture. He would do art nudes of a woman, but he would never take a picture he couldn't show his daughters. So, I got a couple of the shots. I got the models to hold a cup every once in a while. That's the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin.
This one here.
Yeah, that if you ever want to see something that is beautiful, moving, and amazing and life-changing, you should go to the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. These blocks start 2 inches high, and they go, I'm 6'2", they go above my head. And they go, there's like 2 football fields of it, and it's just different lengths. So the cup, starting, because I don't touch the cups as I find them, shooting the cup, that's what I call it, allows me to control what you see around it. Because I'll find a spot and I pick what, that's a coffee addiction, but
I think this is actually the only outcome from
too much of a good thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this concept of, we're in a constant struggle of dissolving the boundaries that we have set in front of us. We all have these blinders on, But when you can see what's really there in front of you, and the way you said it earlier is great, Frank. It's like learning how to be limitless in your boundaries, because you can do so many different things based upon that. And that's a really, really elegant way to describe the possibility. You know, like as in this instance, we're seeing you as an artist, as a photographer, understanding the parameters of this art and the story that you see of how people are coming together and sharing. And then you're just, you know, you're finding a way within the limitations of your art form and in the story, you're finding a way to communicate that through the pictures. And this, like I said, this photo project of this photo of this cup has been going on since 1989 and 2021. That's dedication like I haven't experienced yet in my life.
You know, you start doing it, and next thing you know, 10 years pass. It doesn't seem like that long ago. I don't take pictures of it every day. It's always in the camp. I'm walking around, it's in my bag. I don't take the saucer with me anymore. I just carry the cup. It's easier to keep track of that. But I remember I managed from 1989 to 2015 not to break it. And then I was at Photokina in Germany, and I pulled it out to show someone, and it jumped out of my hands and broke in 3 giant pieces. I wasn't upset. I kind of smiled and I said, well, it was bound to happen anyway. And so I took the pieces, and I thought about whether or not I was going to put it back together again or shoot the pieces. And I got the special glue and I glued it back together again. And I like the way it looks. You saw a picture of it in my hand with the crack in it. It's not complicated, you know. It's there's something about when you get to a point where you start dissolving your boundaries. It's like there's nothing wrong with your eyes, just open them.
Yeah. I mean, that really, I mean, you're always good for one-liners, and that's a really good one. I love it. There's the other line you told me a long time ago. It's never, it always stuck with me, and it's about your photography. And you say, like, what is the line? Sometimes you.
Well, I was being interviewed for a television thing because we'd done a art show, and everybody really liked it. And the news guy said, "Man, your work is odd and wonderful." And he goes, "How do you come up with this stuff?" I said, "Sometimes I happen to a photograph, and other times it happens to me. And either way, I'm good."
That's amazing.
I'm good. I don't question it. You know, and to clarify that is, if I'm walking someplace and I see something, I don't wonder if I'm going to take a picture. I take a picture, and I figure if I don't like it, I won't like it later, but at least I have it.
May I ask a question, Frank?
Sure.
I know that on your card you have the word ubiquity.
Ubiquitous. Ubiquitous.
Okay, ubiquitous, which I think means something that is everywhere.
Yes, it's being able to be, the ability to be everywhere, be present, which is different. See, when you're present, you're really grounded where we're in all places. When you're all the other way, you're all over the place and you're not really grounded. You're just, but ubiquitous is the Latin word for ubiquity. And I like taking pictures of all kinds of things, and the light makes me shoot the picture. And the purists, when you first tell them, I like shooting everything, they're like, oh, bah. But when they see the pictures and they all have a common thread, they kind of get it. You know, and if they don't get it, eventually they will. They get their boundaries dissolved, and, you know, hey, their eyes open up. And
Very cool.
So you're not stuck in any one category. You're not a portrait photographer. You're not a landscape photographer. You're not any kind of in any little pigeonhole. Your photography is ubiquitous.
Yeah, when I was doing a lot of commercial work, I had to be careful with the art directors, because when you got the art director that wanted to see people, I was very careful. You have a portfolio of people and nothing else. I had different portfolios, and I had the artsy fartsy portfolio which is like that See for Yourself book I showed you. And I had a couple of art directors that lost their minds when they saw that, and they always called me for work. They would just call me and say, we got this white paper cup, you take it and go do something with it. And those were the jobs I always loved. It's people, places, things, which is everything, and coffee cups, which is the rest of it.
It's so interesting to me that by honing in on one subject for, what has this been, 32 years?
Yeah.
Somehow this zoning in has allowed you to go,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
To ubiquitous.
It again has opened some. It opened the door that allowed Greg and I to be invited to. And the show was I call my thing At Sea Level, and I called the show At Sea Level, and it was people, places, things, and coffee cups. And we were invited in the University of Groningen in Northern Holland, and I took 95 prints. And half of them, 50 were coffee cups, and the rest were people, places, and things. And the chair of the architecture department, who his expertise is humanity in urban spaces. And he's a big deal in the architect world. His name is Cor Wagner, a very interesting Dutch gentleman. And he's been trying to put this show together for 4 years. And finally, he got 2 students he could trust to do it. And I'd call them at my time, 12 midnight my time is 9 o'clock in the morning there, and we talk about it for 6 months before we flew out for it. And it's a lovely town. If you ever want to go to a chill, really cool place in Holland, Groningen has, it's like Amsterdam without the tourists.
You know, to Renee's point, I think it's really interesting because you said something earlier, Frank. Actually, this is before the talk today, but you told me a long time ago that shooting in black and white made you a better color photographer. And it's kind of like, to Renee's point there, it's like by doing the one thing, it opened you up to so much more. And it's interesting because by focusing on the black and white work, your color work is really good as well. I'm starting to see a little bit more of my color work in a different way, but it's, you know, kind of knowing that you can accomplish something and sticking in it and doing it, it kind of opens the door to understand that you can accomplish more when you really just apply yourself to it. Because you've seen what that success is like. You understand the process it took to get there. And you know, you then understand that you can apply that to whatever else it is that you're trying to do. And it's really interesting. Renee, you just put that to words right now, but it's a phenomenon that is consistent. And Frank, you've said it before, and I think we all experience it from time to time. It's just, you know, tying it all together.
Yeah. So towing a very tight line, how that can then dissolve the boundaries is kind of an interesting phenomenon. And I'd love to hear if anybody in the group has experience along those lines, how a focus can actually then prepare you for something much broader.
I can add, let me say, I just thought of something when we talk about becoming limitless within your boundaries. I met a gentleman that I had some pictures in a bakery, and he called me up and said, your work's amazing. I want to meet you. I want to talk to you about your work. So I drove out and I met him, and we sat there, and he bought 4 prints from me, which was fantastic. But he said to me, he goes, your work is amazing. It's like you live on the edge. And I said, no, you become the edge. That way you'll never fall off. Because people that live on the edge, to show they can do that, they eventually fall off. And, you know, sometimes you don't get a chance to get back up there. But if you learn to be one with where you are, you can do amazing things and project yourself outside of that.
Donna, I saw your hand up.
You asked about if someone had had a similar experience, and just recently, I'd say over the last year, I've come upon so many examples of people who are looking for seeing so much in a place or a location or a space. For instance, a landscape artist that I know, when he was younger, traveled all over the place looking for something, new things, a new experience, a new subject. And after about 30 years, 20 or 30 years of painting, he spent a year painting one tree on one part of his property through all the seasons. And to him, that was the most, one of the most expansive things he'd ever done, because the detail caused him to go much deeper. And instead of outwardly, it took him inward, where he saw depths that he'd never seen before. So it was just an example of what you were asking.
Yeah, being limitless within your boundaries. Exactly.
Kirk?
Thanks, Renee. Thank you, Frank. Wow, it is really a reward. It's a privilege to hear someone as creative and insightful as yourself say a few things about their work. So I appreciate it very much. One of the I'll tell you the chord that's struck in me that I hear kind of through the conversation and this last question is what you hear in many spiritual traditions about the macrocosm being in the microcosm. And when you first spoke about the cup as being it's a man-made object, of course, but it relates to the egg, right? As you could say, like the primal container, and the purity of the cup being white, and its utility, right? It's perfectly formed in relation to its utility, and yet it has a relationship to this universal symbol, which you also find in all mythologies. The egg is connected with like the birth of all things. In the Hindu tradition, even that which precedes the cosmos coming to birth is an egg. It's called Hiranyagarbha. It's a golden egg, right? Because it's that whole mystery of that which is unseen coming to birth, eventually coming to birth, But what's inside, we don't know. We can't see it, but we know that it's about to come to birth. And then the shape also being expressive of infinity, because it's a continuous curve, like the circumference of a circle and so on. And there's a lot of symbology there, but that whole idea about within we think of as a simple utilitarian object as containing like a universal beauty to it. And no matter what, and then the different contexts that you put it in adds to that dimension. It adds you could say there's an infinite variety of contexts in which you could place that universal symbol, which is also man-made, and it would like reflect something different because of the context that it's in. So it's just it's really wonderful to see someone who's done that. But so in terms of experience, a similar sort of experience, I'm an architect, and often it doesn't happen every time. Depends on the project, but occasionally I'm able to see cosmic dimensions in a design, right? So that the form and shape of the house itself has associations with something universal and cosmic, and yet it's very utilitarian as well, right? It has to work in terms of circulation and function, in terms of the site that it's on. So again, there's this like infinite differentiation of contexts, but associated with a universal meaning, underlying meaning. And in exploring that in a particular situation and focusing on that, it's like the design itself unfolds from that. a lot of you could say creative aspects of the design unfold from that initial idea. So yeah, I think it is kind of a universal process, a creative process that you're describing. So thank you again.
Oh, I used to, I wanted to be an architect, and I suddenly realized it was way more than I wanted to get into. But I shot architecture for some architect. I don't know if you ever heard of Eric Owen Moss. I did some buildings for him.
Yes, he's very famous, very well known.
Yeah, he it's a short story. There's the French Laundry building in LA, and I walked in there with a camera and I looked up and I was like, wow, look at that. I said, can I take a picture of this? He goes, yeah. He happened to be in the lobby. So I photographed and I brought a print to him, and he flipped out and said, I want you to shoot more buildings for me. And I did a couple of things for him. But yeah, he was pretty cool, really, actually very approachable at the time. But anyway, that was my interjection.
Thank you so much. Elena D'Souza, I see you in our background. I haven't ever met you. I wonder what thoughts you might have for us. Have you had that kind of experience of something you focused on opening up for you? Or any other thought you might have on today's beautiful talk?
Asking me, Elena?
Yes, I am. Elena D'Souza.
I don't have any comments. I'm just enjoying this, but thank you.
Oh, good. Yes, you're so welcome.
Just resting here.
Okay. We're so glad you joined us. Thank you so much. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just always want to make sure that people know they're welcome to add into this particular conversation. It's for all of us.
Thank you, Renee. I'm enjoying it. I'm in BC. I'm dealing with allergies right now, so I'm just resting on my window seat, and my hookup is such that I don't have a webcam on my the monitor I'm watching through. But I am a photographer of sorts. I do photography, and I always enjoy hearing what other people have to share and their life journey and their photographic and artistic journey. So very interesting. Thank you.
Well, we haven't met anyone who hasn't had some pretty interesting life experiences to share. I'm so glad that you can come to us as a photographer to listen to this talk from the photographic tradition.
One thing I just want to say is currently our photo club on Salt Spring is having a show. It's called Eclectic Visions. It's a virtual show this year because of the pandemic. And one of the photographs I'm showing is actually a composite that I took on Kauai in 2017. So it's, you know, Hawaii is very close to my heart. It's a composite of vegetation at Anahola, if you probably know what it is.
Yeah, on Kauai, yes. Anahola granola, you got it.
And with some, you know, whatever, it's just what it is, but I thought I'd mention that.
Oh, thank you. So that's on something being put on by Photoshop.
It's actually put on by the photo club on Salt Spring Island, where I live.
Okay.
I can send you the link if you're interested, or if there's a chat here. Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just put the link in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great.
It's up till August 31st, but it just went up this week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Sharon, do you have some thoughts you wanted to add to us about this idea? Any of the ideas that we've been working on with dissolving boundaries, limitlessness?
No, I started off with a brownie camera only, and it was black and white. And lucky for me, somebody developed my film for me. But I mean, I could never capture, when I take pictures, I can never capture the essence of pictures. So I admire when like Frank and Greg, can do that. I'm unable to do it.
Maybe someone else needs to look at your pictures. I bet you.
You want to see my back?
That you've done what you said you're not doing.
Mhm.
Well, I don't
Maybe you're
think
not the best judge.
I don't think you have a brownie camera.
I have one on the wall in the next room.
I don't think so.
Frank has every camera.
I got all kinds of film cameras. I carry one with a coffee cup. I carry a digital and a film camera every day.
Well, I had high aspirations to be a Frank Jackson. And it never happened.
Yet.
Nobody told me I couldn't be a photographer. That's how I ended up. My parents never said, you don't want to do that. They just kind of went, okay, whatever. And I never let anything get in the way. I walked away from IBM to go back to being a photographer when I was 20. I'd worked for them for almost 4 years, working on their equipment. And then I realized I wasn't corporate. So I quit.
That's one way to dissolve a barrier right there.
I dissolved the barrier. I took the severance pay, went to the camera store and bought a wide angle lens from our 4x5 view camera.
Now that's devotion.
Yeah, which ended up, I met an architect and he saw I could shoot houses and he hired me. I shot his houses for a year with that lens and that camera. So,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But you've loved it since you were a kid, yeah?
I fell in love with photography when I realized that I didn't draw like I thought I was supposed to. So I use a camera for me is just a fancy pencil, and light is the ink I put in that pencil. So, I tell people I'm a photographer, but I'm an artist that draws with a camera. And my gift, I was blessed with the gift of.
Good thing. Is this usually just like empty?
Say what?
Uh-oh.
We got it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I took my first roll of film came out. It was perfect. It scared me. I was incredibly lucky. I processed it, and I did another one, and I processed it, and my friends' pictures were all over the place. Mine were coming out, and one day I realized, you have a gift. You need to make sure that you can stop getting lucky and be consistent. So I taught myself to be consistent. Photography is like culinary skills. You have to maintain your temperatures. You have to remember exposure. And if you do those things, you'll always have good negatives. Just as you keep your temperature straight in the kitchen, your cakes won't fall. Because unlike, there's no Photoshop for a fallen cake. Yeah, let me take that back in the kitchen and fix that. That's my so, yeah. And then the digital world popped up, and I was like, digital, and I'm never being, it won't be anything. Won't be anything. Then I got real quiet, and somebody gave me a stolen copy of Photoshop. Put this on your computer. And then I had a scanner, and I was scanning my prints, trying to turn my photographic prints so they looked as good in the print on the computer screen. And they look great. And then I tried to print one. And there's a thing called color management. So the black and white picture came out all the colors of the rainbow because I didn't understand color management. But I knew color management with film, but not with digital. So anyway, that road, I educated myself on that. And now I would look at Tai Chi. I'm kind of like a Tai Chi photographer where I flow with it. I flow. My vision is flowing. It's always flowing. It's always moving. I don't get stagnant, and I don't take pictures every day. I don't have to. I don't have to fulfill myself by, I got to shoot today. I got to take 20 pictures this week. I don't do that. I have people that tell them, they'll come and say, hey, I'm having a trouble getting the pictures I want. And I'll just tell them, shoot your way into and out of that. And I don't specify how many times you click the camera, but shoot your way into and out of that. Just like, I guess, an art teacher, if you're doing sketching, will tell you, start sketching in your sketchbook, sketch your way into your craft.
Yeah.
It's a dance.
Do you mean like practice makes perfect? Is that sort of what you're saying, or something different?
Something close to that, because you can go. So here, case point. I know people that can take an iPhone and go out and take pictures with it. And I know people that can take a $10,000 Leica digital camera and take pictures with it. And the person with the iPhone who has a natural ability to understand composition and light will blow that guy with the $10,000 camera out of the water. So it's not the size of the bullet, it's hitting your target. You know, you practice, but don't force it. You know, you want to dissolve a boundary. You don't want to blow it away, because there's a journey while you're dissolving that boundary. You need to go through that journey so you won't miss any part of it. You get some wisdom while you dissolve your boundaries. Sometimes those boundaries need to be there a little bit longer. They're there for a reason. It's not time for you to get through this one just yet. Maybe you need to just cool out, and one day you turn around and it's gone. It's time for you to go through that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole sketching your way into it, or even fixating on the one thing until you can, and letting it blossom into all of these other things. I think that's part of it. I mean, to your point, Kirk, about practicing and, you know, making it perfect, it's almost like you can find so much more by continually doing one thing. But even if you're good at it, even if you got it really well, you can find so many different ways to look at it. And Frank, I think you told me one time, just about the boundaries. Actually, you're talking about it in this talk. It's like after a while, you start to realize that the boundaries aren't really even there. You know, it's just about seeing it differently. You know, like you start to open yourself up to that ability to see more than what you thought was there originally.
Yeah, it's I think a long time ago when I first started, I used to worry about, I don't want to miss any pictures. I don't worry about that anymore. I don't, you know, like I said, sometimes I see them and sometimes they see me. And, you know, I see pictures other people take, I wish I'd have taken, you know, but even if I was there, I wouldn't have seen it.
That goes both ways. I see pictures that you've taken that I don't even understand what came into your head. And I don't even know how the picture even came out. I have a question for Maurice, because I like seeing Maurice. How are you, sir? What are your thoughts about today's talk?
Well, I'm just listening. I don't really do too much photography, and other than I just take pictures of things and people on the moment, you know. Mm-hmm. But I was struck just by some of the idea of ubiquity, but yet it takes light to illuminate it. Mm-hmm. And you said that light is what makes you shoot it. And so I assume that's the angle of light and darkness and shadow on one hand, but also maybe, I don't know, maybe the hue, if that's the right word, the hue of light. Like the winter solstice right after that. If you have sunshine where you live, the light is so much different.
Oh yeah.
The quality of the light is so much different. Mm-hmm. Could you say a little bit more then about the light?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I talked about color management, we talk about color temperature. So in the old days, when you took a roll of film to the lab and you got it back, there'd be these pictures where the sky was blue, and the grass was green and water was blue. And then maybe there'd be these pictures where inside the house where it was yellow or warm. So that's daylight film with tungsten lighting. And because we do LED, we have LED lights. You can buy LED lights that are daylight, which is white light. And then what they try to do is they try to sell you these bulbs that have a comfort warmth to them. And they're not white light, they're warmer, but they're not true tungsten. But you can read a book with them and that kind of stuff. The light that I have right here is pure neutral light. I can use this to photograph something with. And a light like this 20 years ago would have been hundreds of dollars. Now they're $20, and I can adjust the color temperature by hitting a thing on the bottom. Altering the temperature of your light changes the mood. So in color, they used to put these warming filters on. And digitally, you can just go on and do a slider and do that to your color pictures now. Black and white pictures can be sepia tone, which is that slight, almost brown gray. They can be sepia, they can be brown tone, they can be blue tone. And I've done the chemical versions of these, which is scary because it involves a bleach. So you take one of your perfect prints, you wash it, and while it's wet, you put it in the bleach. You know what the bleach does? Makes the image disappear completely. And you gasp and go, oh no! Then you put it into another solution and it comes back this beautiful, warm sepia or blue, depending on the one you want to do. I made some 20 years ago. I still kept a couple of them. There's something about them. They look like pictures that you might see from your grandparents. And that was because they didn't know how to make neutral paper back then. So.
It's interesting. I have a point on that, Frank. And also to you, Maurice, we see so much, obviously, with our eyes. And we communicate so much by what we're looking at, and the light is illuminating everything for us to capture. But when you're talking about even in places where there's the winter solstice, or specifically here in Hawaii, I know at a particular time of the year at noon, high noon, you can stand in a spot and you'll be standing directly in your shadow because the sun is like directly overhead. And that's only this place. That doesn't happen like anywhere else on the planet. And it's really because of how the sun is angled to where the planet is and where we're at in rotation and all that. So there's so many different things that light can do. And it's hue and it's in the angle. I mean, the sunsets in Hawaii are amazing. There's the clean air, but there's also just the vacant area around the islands that allow for light to kind of just bounce off of the clouds and bounce off of the green mountains and just change the atmosphere. And, you can communicate so much with that. And it's really interesting because as a photographer or an artist, you start to pick up these things and you start to see that you can do so much more with these things. And that's, when you get these intimate images that you see, and you can really capture a lot by choosing to expose for these different lighting situations. That's one of the fun parts for me. Yeah.
Let me add this. So it's smoggy here in Los Angeles. Smog is wonderful for photography because it
See, Maurice, you came from the right place, you LA boy, you.
It softens.
It's the hood,
Softens the light and it takes the edge off. So I've been shooting here for a long time, and then you go to Northern California where it's less smog, and I process the negatives, and immediately right away I could see, oh man, I was fine because once again I maintained my exposure and my temperatures and everything when I processed the film, but the white and the blacks were different. You know, you just stark pure light in San Francisco, instead of this haze with the dust. There was always dust in the air, even before cars, because of the winds. They blow in from the sea, and then they stop in Riverside. So when you come in on a plane, you see smog and dust. You fly into it. So yeah, it was another thing to be aware of. Like they talk about the light in Paris. Paris has got moisture in the air, which also diffuses the light. Certain times of day, or when it's really humid there, you get these beautiful, funky, foggy pictures.
Yeah.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
And this is really for everyone. In what way do you think that photography, or really well done photography, which I think is probably like any well done art, dissolves boundaries either between people or between us as inner beings and our outer world? How does art dissolve boundaries?
The interesting thing about art is a lot of times you don't know what you like till you see it. You know, and once you see, well, that art speaks to you in your own language. It stops you and makes you, maybe you were going somewhere, you'll stop and go, wow, look at that. And you don't care who did it, if they're ugly, fat, whatever. You want to know who did this. You want to see more of the work. I would want to see more of the work to make sure it wasn't just a one-time fluke. And usually it's not. You want to know who did it, the person, and you want to know what they were thinking about. You shouldn't need to go to school and get an MFA to know what you like when you see something. Greg and I have had this discussion. I kind of crack up laughing because I was never educated with photography. Every time it was funny, IBM, my father worked for IBM, and they would have paid for my education, but the schools were full. I couldn't get in. So I now say I'm glad I didn't get in, but when some people come to me and the young guys say, I tell them, like, look, go to a very good college, a community college that has a reputation with a good photo department, take a 2-year class, and then go get a business class. So you won't be sleeping on your friends' couches because you quit your job to be a photographer.
Well, it was really a question for everybody too. We're really close to the end, and so especially if somebody hasn't had a chance to talk, that how whether it's photography or another art helps dissolve boundaries, perhaps between people or between people and their external.
A lot of the photo exhibitions in America are kind of boring. And I found that out when I started going to Europe, and someone said, hey, there's an exhibition. There's nobody famous that I knew. And you go and the work was stunning, absolutely stunning. When I went to the Czech Republic, they have a way of seeing there. When I was walking around Prague at night, I started to understand why Franz Kafka wrote the kind of stories he wrote, because it's black magic in that place at night, and the lights glow. You know, I've done some shooting there. You start seeing how other people, you can see how they see and what they love, and you can see kind of who they are. There are, to add to that, in Europe, a lot of artists get sponsorship that they'd never get here. You know, I'd have to be Lenny Kravitz to get sponsored for something. Looking for a American photographer, and he wants to ask you something. So He's a French guy and he lives here and he lives in France. And he said to me, I love your work. I want to know, and we want you to be the headline photographer for the Selma Photo Festival in Selma, Alabama. He was a friend of John Davis, the black congressman that died, that had been in the March on Selma. And they do a photo festival there. And this is what he said. He said, he said, I'm friends with a lot of people there. There's a black woman there that owns a coffee shop. I want to meet her. I'm going to meet her, actually. I'm looking forward to it. And he said, they have blacks and whites on the board, which is fantastic. And they said, things in Selma are cool. They said in the daytime, the black folk and the white folk get along fine. But at night, they go their separate ways. They don't mingle. But because of the photo festival, they both said, it's the first time we ever got together as a community and hung out. And I said, that's great.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is the incredible ways that your photography has really opened doors, and an open door is a dissolved boundary, is it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really wonderful.
Renee, is there a moment, a very quick point to fill what you were saying, Renee and Frank? It's interesting because that's the purpose of art. And I'm a proponent of that. Like, art really does and has always brought people together. Music, photography. I mean, the world has really changed with photography. People saw images of Vietnam and their whole idea of what we were doing over there changed. And, the idea of what can be communicated through all of the arts that we do. Architecture is one of them. The way that a house is built, the way that a story is written or a painter paints. Art is that vehicle of really showing us to ourselves that we are all part of the same, we're all part of the same being and species and moment, and we can actually touch it. And like, art does that. It's pretty amazing how it's consistent.
Who might feel inspired to give us a little vote of thanks to close us out here?
Oh, Frank, it was wonderful listening to you. Brought back memories of my dad, who loved photography. That was his hobby. And he just captured so many wonderful memories. And the fact that he would be just so ecstatic if he was still here with all the innovation that we have now to take pictures. But thank you for expanding our understanding of dissolving boundaries, because I really feel that you're on your way. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Thank you ever so much, everyone who attended, and certainly to Frank and to Greg. Thank you so much.